He was called the British Elvis, but behind closed doors, Cliff Richard knew the truth about the king of rock and roll, and now, decades later, he's finally ready to speak. Let's ask you this first type 1 in the comments if you think Elvis was the greatest ever. Or 0 if you believe his legacy is overrated. Because what Cliff Richard just revealed about Elvis Presley's secret pain, jealousy, and a shocking final request will leave you stunned. A Saturday in May 1956 changed Cliff Richard's life forever. He was walking through Hertfordshire with friends Norman Mitham and Terry Smart when they saw a green Citroen parked outside Asplin's newsagent. The unforgettable opening lines drifted from its open window, "We ill since my baby left me." Heartbreak Hotel left the young men speechless. They stood open-mouthed as the car's owner returned and drove away with the mysterious music. "Wow, I had never heard anything like it in my life," Cliff recalled in his memoir. They didn't know the song or artist at first, but Norman heard it again on the American Forces Network AFN and told them, "It's called Heartbreak Hotel, and it's by some guy called Elvis Presley." This wasn't just another song for Cliff, it was a revelation. "Elvis sounded like he was singing for me. To me," he explained. "Nobody my age, no teenager, would ever have been inspired by Frank Sinatra or Bing Crosby or wanted to be like them. Elvis meant something completely different to the future Sir Cliff, unlike the era's established crooners. He sounded so young, so cool, and so now in his voice cut through everything else. He sounded passionate and powerful." Cliff became obsessed with learning everything about this new musical force. What really engaged him was the rhythms of the music, the beats, the feel, the attitude, the sense of something being born. He took a holiday job picking potatoes to buy Elvis's album, Bent Double, and yanking spuds out of the dirt for $1 an hour. The hard work paid off when he finally got the record. Though Heartbreak Hotel wasn't on the album, Cliff found many other songs to love. Blue Suede Shoes, with its urgent vocal and frantic rhythms, I'm Left, You're Right, She's Gone, with Elvis's trembling voice, Lottie Miss Claudie with its honky-tonk piano crazy twang and aching vocal. Cliff would later acknowledge this influence openly, saying that without Elvis, he and many others would never have happened. He described Elvis's sound as an alien art form that combined hillbilly and bluegrass music, country music in general, along with gospel rhythm and blues. Cliff's admiration went way beyond just appreciating Elvis's music. "I set off on a determined one-man mission to make myself look as similar to him as was humanly possible," he confessed. The iconic hairstyle came first, and he spent hours in front of the bathroom mirror sweeping my hair to the back of my head and trying to fix it in place with Brill Cream. His imitation reached his eating habits, too. He read in Girlfriend magazine that Elvis enjoyed peanut butter and jam on toast and started eating the same. "This is how Elvis eats it," he told himself. "It must taste great." The press labeled him the English Elvis, or the British answer to Elvis, when he finally broke through. This wasn't just media hype. Cliff was copying Elvis in 1958, from the jet-black quiff to the thrusting hips and rubber legs. He wore Elvis's favorite colors, pink and black, and vibrated his legs just like the king during his early performances. Cliff was imitating him shamelessly in his early career years and became good enough to do somewhat credible imitations of American teen idols, especially Elvis. This early obsession with Elvis shaped Cliff Richard's future as a performer both professionally and personally, even as his life and career evolved over the decades. The biggest irony in Cliff Richard's career, which Elvis Presley shaped, was how life kept showing him glimpses of meeting his idol, but never let it happen. Sir Cliff almost met the king several times, but something always got in the way. Cliff took a special trip to Bad Nauheim, Germany in the late 1950s, where Elvis served in the military. He and his friends, including Tony Meehan from The Shadows, changed their Italian vacation plans just to find the king. "It wasn't difficult," Sir Cliff recalled. "We got down this street, this one house was covered in graffiti, the walls had, 'We love you, Elvis,' and I said, 'This has got to be it.'" Cliff walked up to the house with youthful confidence and knocked on the door. This great big brute of an American said, "Hi, what can I do for you?" When Cliff asked about Elvis, he got a simple, "No, he's not," in response. Cliff made the most of the moment. "Well, I'm a singer. Cliff Richard from England. Could you tell him I said hello?" He and his friends left quickly, and this became the first time he almost met his musical hero. Another chance came up almost 20 years later during Cliff's 1976 American tour, where he promoted Devil Woman. A journalist offered to set up both a meeting and a photo with Elvis. Cliff, surprisingly, held back. "Elvis was going through a very fat period," he explained. "He had that. I don't know if something was wrong because he got very fat and then he'd lose weight." Cliff wanted to keep his perfect image of Elvis intact, which led to a decision he would always regret. "If I'm going to have me and Elvis in my refrigerator, I'd really like him to look good," he thought at the time. "I noticed that when he was making a film, he would diet down and regain the animal magnetism, and I wanted a picture of Elvis looking good. So I said no, and I waited," Cliff explained. Elvis died of a heart attack at 42, just a year after Cliff passed up that chance. This timing turned Cliff's hesitation into one of his deepest regrets. "I regret it now, because he died not long after that. I think none of us knew that was going to happen," Cliff reflected solemnly. "I was stupid, really, and I regret it to this day. I'd love to be able to say to you, yes, I did meet Elvis, but I didn't." This taught Cliff a hard lesson, and he now tells others, "If you've got a feeling that you want to meet somebody in our business, maybe disregard weight or anything, just go and say hello if you can." This regret has stayed with Cliff through his career and comes up often in interviews. "I would give anything to go back and say, I'll have a picture. I'd rather have had a picture with Elvis overweight than have none now." Cliff. Richard keeps many things private, like who his partner is at 82. But his regret about missing Elvis remains one of the few things he talks about openly. This shows how much it affected him. "I really kicked myself," Cliff admitted, simply summing up years of wishing his Elvis story had ended differently. One theory about Cliff Richard's limited American success stands out from the rest. Many believe Elvis Presley's notorious manager tried to undermine his career. Cliff has often wondered if Colonel Tom Parker worked actively to stop another Elvis-like star from rising in the American market. This question stayed with him throughout his performing career, even as public attention turned to his personal life at age 82. The story's turning point came in 1960 on America's biggest music stage, The Ed Sullivan Show. This moment should have launched his American career. Instead, it became a setback that would cast a shadow over his prospects for decades to come. "I was asked to do Living Doll," Cliff recalled of the appearance. But that wasn't what was happening in America at the time. It was all rock and roll. When they asked me to sing Living Doll, I thought it was strange. The show made him perform a soft pop tune instead of his rock songs. This choice stripped away his power to connect with American audiences. The Elvis-inspired performer who had set British crowds on fire was nowhere to be seen. Sullivan's show presented a tame, harmless version of Cliff that left no real mark. "I should have sung Move It," Cliff later reflected, referring to his breakthrough rock single that had earned him comparisons to Elvis in Britain. "That would have shown American audiences who I really was." A theory took shape over time. The career setback wasn't just bad luck or poor judgment by show producers. Music industry insiders who worked with Cliff suggested Colonel Parker Elvis's controlling manager might have pulled some strings. "Colonel Parker was very protective of Elvis's territory," explained music historian Daniel Williams. "The last thing he wanted was a young, good-looking British singer who sounded like Elvis taking any of the spotlight." The alleged meddling went beyond the Ed Sullivan Show. People say Colonel Parker put pressure on radio stations to limit Cliff's airplay, pushed music journalists to downplay his talents in reviews, used his industry connections to block Cliff's access to major American venues. His shot at American stardom slowly faded as his career took different paths. Public interest shifted to his personal life. Cliff has never taken a firm stance on these theories. Sometimes he sees this explanation as a way to understand why he didn't make it big in America despite his huge success elsewhere. It's an interesting theory and certainly makes for a good story. Cliff once acknowledged in a BBC interview, "Would I have been a threat to Elvis? I don't know. But Parker was definitely the kind of manager who left nothing to chance. Later in life, as media attention turned more toward his personal life, he became less convinced about blaming others for his American outcomes. The truth is probably more mundane, he reflected during a 2019 interview. America is a big place with its own stars. Not everyone can break through there no matter how big you are elsewhere. Cliff has shown remarkable grace when discussing both his personal relationships and theories about Colonel Parker. Media speculation continues, but he stays above the fray. "I've had an amazing career by any standard," he noted philosophically. "If America wasn't meant to be part of that trip, I'd make my peace with it. Some things in life remain mysteries, and that's okay." Cliff Richard's attempts to establish a music career in America tell a story of bad luck and poor timing. He achieved massive success in the UK and Europe, but hit constant roadblocks trying to break into the United States market. Cliff and the Shadows undertook a task in 1962 that should have been their breakthrough American tour to promote their film, The Young Ones. Guitarist Bruce Welch described it as one of the biggest campaigns ever mounted to launch an unknown British singer to American audiences despite the fact that we had toured the country before. The plan was ambitious. They would show the movie in selected U.S. cinemas, and right after Cliff and the Shadows would jump on stage for an hour-long live performance. Their record label substantially invested in this promotional effort to leverage Cliff's European stardom. The moment that should have defined their career turned into what Welch bluntly called an unmitigated disaster. Their carefully planned tour became a series of letdowns as venues stayed half-empty nationwide. No music promoter could have predicted the biggest problem that ruined the 1962 tour. A geopolitical crisis brought the world close to nuclear war. Americans stayed home glued to their TV sets during the Cuban Missile Crisis instead of going to concerts. Welch remembered theaters that could normally have held 2,000 people or more were only half full. Americans naturally had little interest in watching a British singer perform as tensions escalated between the United States and Soviet Union. One account of the tour noted, "Everyone felt it was the brink of World War III. A happy-go-lucky show was the last thing audiences wanted to see." The silver lining came from Canada, where Cliff reached number 5 on the Toronto chart and number 10 in Vancouver. Modern celebrities face constant speculation about their personal lives, like questions about who is Cliff Richard's partner at 82. Back in 1962, he was just a young performer whose career path was shaped by global events beyond his control. The Ed Sullivan Show appearance in 1960 marked another crucial setback. Sullivan made Cliff perform "Where Did You Get That Hat?", an old vaudeville song instead of rock hits like Move It, that showcased his true style. Cliff admitted, "I sometimes blame Ed Sullivan, in fact. He had seen a film I did called The Young Ones. We had sung a lot of old vaudeville songs. Ed loved that and said, if he comes on my show, he has to do that." This decision damaged Cliff's American image. "Singing in Cockney. I was a rock and roll singer for crying out loud," he said. "I didn't get a fair crack of the whip from the word go." Later, Cliff found some success with Devil Woman, which made it to the U.S. top 10. Elton John helped with this small breakthrough. Cliff explained, "My U.S. label wasn't bothered about releasing I'm Nearly Famous, so Elton put it out in the U.S. on his Rocket label." Time changed Cliff's perspective about his limited American success. "I never broke America. When I was young, it used to bother me, but now I'm glad that I never did," he reflected. "I can walk around there in peace and quiet." Cliff Richard's partner remains a topic of interest for many fans today. Yet his relationship with America has evolved into something unexpected. He now values the anonymity it gives him. Sir Cliff Richard watched the Elvis Presley story play out over 6 decades from his explosive arrival to his tragic end. He managed to keep his own health and stability while seeing his idols decline. Their life paths couldn't have been more different. The dramatic changes in the King's appearance during the 1970s worried Cliff. "Elvis was going through a very fat period," Cliff said plainly. "He had something wrong with him because he got very fat and then he'd lose weight." Cliff's observations about Elvis stayed professional and direct, unlike the questions people ask about Cliff Richard's partner now. He saw how Elvis would diet down when making films to regain the animal magnetism that made him famous worldwide. Cliff's career moved steadily forward as Elvis struggled with weight prescription drugs and exhaustion. His own disciplined lifestyle, regular exercise, and careful diet stood out against Elvis's chaotic health habits. "I've always tried to look after myself," Cliff once said. Maybe seeing what happened to Elvis showed me how important that was. This approach worked well for him. People who ask about Cliff Richard's partner at 82 can't help but notice his youthful energy. Cliff's choice not to take a photo with Elvis in 1976 reveals a lot about both men, beyond just wanting Elvis to look good. In Us Allah us Sennis Iminian Esasadi Hani Basenin Jin Bam Diam Dain If I'm going to have me and Elvis in my refrigerator, I'd really like him to look good, Cliff explained. Elvis had shaped his early career, so he wanted to keep that perfect image of his hero. Before this chance came up, Cliff had kept Elvis memorabilia and pictures from the King's prime years. He couldn't bring himself to replace those perfect images with Elvis's current state. This choice showed how carefully Cliff handled his public image, too. Through his career, he's kept tight control over how people see him, including details about who is Cliff Richard's partner 2024 and other private matters. Elvis's death in August 1970 left Cliff shocked and full of regret. "I regret it now because he died not long after that. I think none of us knew that was going to happen," he said about missing his only chance to meet Elvis. "I was stupid, really, and I regret it to this day," Cliff admitted honestly. Elvis's death at 42 taught Cliff about keeping balance in life. The media sometimes asks about Cliff Richard's new partner, but his stable personal life helped him last in an industry that took Elvis too soon. Elvis's tragic decline became both heartbreaking and educational for Cliff, showing him exactly what path to avoid in his own amazing career. Unlike his idol Elvis Presley, who gave in to fame's pressures, Sir Cliff Richard found salvation from an unexpected source. His father's death in 1961 led him to begin a spiritual experience that changed his life and gave him stability throughout his remarkable career. Bill Latham Cliff's religious studies teacher became the key figure who introduced him to Christianity. Cliff wanted to contact his late father through a medium, but Latham steered him toward Christian guidance instead. Their relationship grew stronger over time. Latham moved into Cliff's mansion at the exclusive St. George's Hill estate in Weybridge. They lived together for 30 years until 1996 when Latham moved out to live with his wife. Cliff spoke openly about Latham's deep influence. "He is the one who led me on to that spiritual pathway that changed my life fully and completely. He showed me how important it was to be charitable and also be brave enough to speak openly of my faith." Their bond grew beyond spiritual mentorship. Latham left teaching in 1970 to join Tear Fund charity and became Cliff's Christian manager. Cliff's dedication to Christianity in 1965 set him apart from Elvis's path. He announced it at a Billy Graham crusade meeting at Earl's Court the next year. The change was so profound that Cliff thought about quitting rock and roll. He felt he could no longer be the crude exhibitionist labeled too sexy for TV. All the same, his evangelical Christian friends encouraged him to continue his career. People often wonder about Cliff Richard's partner at 82, but his relationship with God helped him through tough times. "When you're lying in your bed and nobody is there, I would talk to God so much. Those prayers were vital for me surviving those years. Cliff had real friends who gave honest advice instead of empty praise. Radio DJ Mike Reed noticed this difference. Elvis was surrounded by people who wouldn't say boo to him. They were all on the gravy train, all yes men. But Cliff has always been surrounded by friends who have a sense of reason. His longtime manager, Peter Gormley, showed this genuine support. People described him as quiet, polite, shrewd, and friendly. They worked together with just a handshake agreement, no formal contracts needed. Beyond his professional circle, Cliff stayed connected with friends outside show business that helped him stay grounded despite his fame. While people speculate about Cliff Richard's partner now, these loyal friendships and faith are the foundations of his stable career. To us, he's just a regular guy, Reed said. He doesn't have that elevated thing about him. Cliff Richard's initial disappointment ended up becoming one of his most precious gifts: complete anonymity in the United States. His megastar status in Britain leads to constant headlines about his personal life, including questions about his partner at 82. The American public barely knows him, which gives him a refreshing escape. I never broke America. When I was young, that used to bother me, but now I'm glad that I never did. Cliff has admitted openly. He can't shop without recognition in Britain. America serves as his sanctuary where he moves freely without celebrity attention. This freedom means more to him now as British media continues to speculate about his partner. In America, I'm just an ordinary person. Nobody knows who I am, he once explained. I can walk into a restaurant without causing a stir, something impossible back home. This difference lets him experience normal life that his British fame doesn't allow. Cliff guards this precious anonymity carefully. James Corden's team approached him about appearing on the popular Carpool Karaoke segment. The show could have introduced him to younger American audiences, but he politely declined. Why would I want to change something that works so perfectly for me? He reasoned. Unlike Britain's persistent interest in his partner in 2024, American media shows no interest in his personal life. The U.S. represents a safe haven for someone whose private life faces constant inspection at home. At my age, having somewhere I can simply exist without being Cliff Richard is precious. He has reflected. This balance between fame in one continent and anonymity in another helped him maintain a unique career longevity. Everyone needs somewhere they can just be themselves, Cliff has noted. America gives me that gift. Throughout the 1960s, Cliff Richard had a succession of tremendous successes, including Living Doll: The Young Ones, Summer Holiday, and Bachelor Boy, all of which became timeless classics. He also went into cinema, appearing in many musical comedies that were well-liked by audiences and helped cement his reputation as a household figure. Cliff Richard remained relevant and successful even when the Beatles arrived and the British invasion began, which he had helped to prepare the way for. Rather than being carried away by shifting musical waves, Cliff adapted. In the 1970s, he transitioned from adolescent idol to mature musician, producing more current and contemplative work. Songs like Devil Woman We Don't Talk Anymore and Wired for Sound demonstrated his ability to adapt and experiment with many genres such as disco and synthpop. His ability to reinvent himself while maintaining his own voice and charm enabled him to achieve constant popularity across generations. Cliff Richard, a very spiritual guy, became a committed Christian in the mid-1960s. His faith became an important part of his identity, impacting both his lifestyle and artistic production. He frequently recorded religious music and was praised for refusing to compromise his principles in the ethically problematic realm of entertainment. He avoided the crazy party scene and instead built a pristine image. His 1979 Christmas single, Mary's Boy Child, Oh My Lord, featuring Boney M. and other spiritual-themed songs, illustrate his dedication to his beliefs. His decision to stay single and childless made headlines, but he handled queries about his personal life with grace, respect, and caution. Cliff Richard has long said that he felt called to a life of service and independence, and many supporters have praised him for living his life on his own terms. Cliff Richard received worldwide fame in addition to his UK triumph with a strong fan following in Australia, South Africa, and across Europe. He has sold over 250 million albums globally, making him one of the most successful music artists of all time. His discography is unparalleled in the UK charts. He is the first performer to have had #1 singles in 5 consecutive decades from the 1950s to the 1990s. His contribution to British culture was legally honored in 1995 when he became the first rock star to be knighted. In 1980, he was awarded the Order of the British Empire, OBE. These honors are not only for his music but also for his charitable efforts and philanthropy which supports causes ranging from HIV/AIDS awareness to children's welfare. Despite his decades of renown and public goodwill, Cliff Richard experienced one of his most difficult periods in 2014 when bogus charges of misconduct arose. The claims sparked a widely publicized police inquiry and media frenzy, inflicting significant emotional hardship. In 2016, the Crown Prosecution Service declared that there was insufficient evidence to prosecute and Richard was completely exonerated. Rather than withdraw from public life, Cliff fought back. He won a high-profile privacy case against the BBC over how the inquiry was handled, and he became a vocal advocate for press accountability and the rights of those under investigation. His nobility and tenacity in the face of hardship further added to his popularity among fans and peers. Cliff Richard continues to perform and produce songs in his 80s with a strong voice and stage presence that defies his age. He has never formally retired, and his upcoming album music is set for 2020. The Air I Breathe demonstrated his ongoing significance, reaching the UK top 5. His yearly Christmas releases continue to be widely anticipated, and his concerts remain successful with both longtime admirers and new audiences. Cliff Richard's personal life has long piqued the interest of fans and journalists alike, especially given the significant personal sacrifices he made in order to pursue and maintain his career in show business. One of the most profoundly altering events in his early adult life was the death of his father, Roger Webb, at the age of 56 in 1961. Cliff was just 21 years old and had just begun his rise to musical prominence. He was severely affected by his father's unexpected demise. In subsequent years, Richard thought with grief and yearning on his father's unfortunate death at a young age, missing out on the most successful and celebrated parts of his son's outstanding career. Cliff noted that during his father's sickness, their friendship grew unusually deep, displaying a rare emotional weakness underlying the young star's polished public persona. Cliff's father's death not only left a void in his personal life, but also placed an unspoken burden on him as he began to feel responsible for the well-being of his mother and sisters, an emotional and financial responsibility that influenced many of his later decisions, including those involving romantic relationships. His mother, Dorothy Webb, had a long life but encountered her own challenges in later years. She died in October 2007 at the age of 87, having battled Alzheimer's disease for a decade. Cliff and his family were devastated to witness his beloved mother's gradual deterioration over the course of 10 years. In a forthright 2006 interview, he emphasized how emotionally demanding it had been to deal with her health, emphasizing the stress and anguish he and his sisters had experienced while caring for her. The gradual deterioration of her memory and identity served as a brutal reminder of life's fragility, and Cliff was once again thrust into the role of family caregiver, which he accepted wholeheartedly. Cliff Richard has been a lifelong bachelor, a personal decision influenced by both emotional ties to his family and the obligations of his public work. One of the first views into this inner turmoil came in the shape of a moving 3-page letter he sent to his first serious girlfriend, Australian-born dancer Delia Wicks, in October 1961. The pair had been together for almost 18 months, and Wicks had anticipated that their romance would lead to marriage. Cliff, on the verge of international success, took the difficult decision to leave the relationship. Cliff detailed his explanation in a letter that became public in April 2010, following Wicks' death from cancer. As a pop artist, I must give up one invaluable privilege, the right to establish a long-term relationship with any special female. He admitted that he had to make what he called probably one of the biggest decisions I'll ever make, and realized the emotional impact it may have on her. He also mentioned how much his mother and sisters relied on him when his father died, underlining that he couldn't desert them or his developing profession. "I have showbiz in my blood now, and I would be lost without it," he wrote, pleading for her to find someone who could love her in ways he felt he couldn't. The letter described the emotional toll of celebrity, which frequently came at the price of personal pleasure. After Delia died in 2010 at the age of 71, her brother Graham Wicks explained how the split had saddened her and referred to Cliff as a really kind man, implying that there were no hard feelings, only lingering grief. A year following his separation with Wicks, Richard had a brief affair with English actress Una Stubbs, famed for her charm and vivacity. Though fleeting, the romance spoke to Cliff's continued struggle to find long-term affection among his burgeoning celebrity. Later in the 1960s, he was romantically involved with dancer Jackie Irving, whom he regarded as breathtakingly gorgeous. For a period, the two were said to be inseparable, implying that Cliff seriously pondered a future with her. The relationship subsequently ended, and Irving married British pop artist Adam Faith. Cliff's journey of artistic passion led him away from a prospective life-mate once more. Cliff's romance with famed British tennis great Sue Barker, a former French Open winner and Wimbledon semi-finalist, was one of the most recognized and interesting chapters of his love life in the 1980s. Their connection received a lot of media attention, especially after Cliff was spotted flying to Denmark to watch her perform in a tennis event. The two were also caught holding hands and appearing extremely in love at Wimbledon, fueling speculation of an upcoming engagement. Cliff was open about his emotions in archival interviews. In a February 1983 interview, he claimed, "These words fueled public speculation that the pop star might finally be ready to settle down." However, by September of the same year, Cliff had withdrawn any imminent intentions, stating, "Despite our mutual affection, the relationship did not progress toward marriage." Cliff said in 2008 that he had seriously pondered proposing to Barker, but eventually concluded that he didn't love her enough to dedicate the rest of his life to her. Sue Barker herself remained amicable about the connection, stating, "I love him, he's great, and I'm sure we love each other." Even after their romance ended and Barker moved on to a new relationship with tennis player Stephen Shaw, Cliff maintained a respectful and fond connection with her, stating, when later asked why he had never married Cliff, answered with reflective honesty, "But marriage is a big commitment, and being an artist takes up a lot of time." These statements capture the core struggle in his personal life, a strong need for love and connection that is always weighted down by an even stronger feeling of obligation to his job, family, and followers. He also said that he was in love with fellow singer and actress Olivia Newton-John in the early 1970s, a time when many guys he quipped were obsessed with her. Unfortunately for Cliff, Olivia was engaged to someone else, and he admitted with a tinge of remorse, "I'm afraid I missed the chance." The truth, as Cliff Richard reveals it, is this: Elvis Presley gave everything, and it nearly destroyed him, but he wanted his pain to serve as a warning for the next generation. Now it's your turn. Do you believe Elvis was happy at the end of his life, or trapped by fame? Let's see what you think. Don't forget to like this video if you still love Elvis's music, and subscribe for more untold stories from music's hidden history. Because sometimes what legends leave behind isn't gold or glory, it's a warning.